Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Tuesday Techniques with me, Jackie Blakemore of So Much More Fun. So today I want to talk to you about doing a full bust adjustment. So I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about why you might need one and what that looks like, and then we're just going to show you a simple bust adjustment on a pattern piece for a bodice. Okay, so we're going to go through that. Just a bit of housekeeping while we're getting set up and waiting to see if anybody can join us live. If you are joining us live, then let me know in the comments. It'd be lovely to see you. As always, I'm always excited when you can come on and ask questions. If you're not able to join live, then no problem. This recording will be put into the Facebook page for So Much More Fun, and also onto the So Much More Fun website. So yeah, if you missed the whole session, then by all means join me there. So today we're going to talk about full bust adjustments, and in terms of the program, so we're trying to do these sessions every Tuesday and get into the habit of kind of coming to say hi and teaching you something new about pattern adjustments to help you get a better fit. And so coming up in the kind of following this one, we've got broad and narrow back adjustments, rounded back adjustments, which is quite common. I need one of those pretty much on every pattern. We're going to go on to talk about sleeve adjustments and tummy adjustments, so they're for the kind of next sessions that are coming up. But for a full program, if you go to the So Much More Fun website, look in the tips and tricks area, and then there's a Tuesday Techniques post in there that's got all the details, so you can kind of find out a bit more there. Okay, so let me know if you are watching. Have you had to do a full bust adjustment or a small bust adjustment? Do you have to kind of make changes in this area of the pattern? So how would you know? Well, basically the sewing patterns that are designed by the commercial sewing companies generally are based on a B cup bra size. So they have to kind of pick one, they have to pick a size, and so they tend to pick a B cup. Now, there are some patterns out there that do cater for multiple cup sizes. So they kind of include all kind of different options for more cup sizes. And they're great because basically they are incorporating some of the things I'm going to show you today already. So they're kind of already there. And what that means is that you don't have to do any of the adjustments. You can just pick the size that suits you. But for the majority, I would say, of patterns that are out there, they're kind of designed for one cup size, and that's usually a B cup. So what you'll find is that when you make the toile or you make the garment and you try it on, if you're not a B cup, then it may take one or two different kind of results from that. So the first is if you are bigger than a B cup, then you might find that if you make the size that matches your kind of your sort of body size, then you'll find that it maybe pulls across the chest. So you might see some wrinkles appearing here, kind of between the bust, so where it's trying to pull too tightly here. You might also spot that down the side seam, it's trying to move forward the side seam, because what's trying to happen is it's trying to kind of borrow fabric from the back to cover the bust area at the front. And so you might notice that when you try it on, the side seam doesn't kind of go straight down the side of your body. It sort of tries to pull forward over the bust. You might also spot that when you try a top on, that instead of hanging straight down kind of over your bust, it sort of tends to stick out a little bit. It's not kind of folding around your bust. And also when you stand sideways, the front might be shorter than the back, because again, you've not got the length to cover the extra that you need for the bust. So they're just a few of the things that you might see. So I just want to say welcome to my mum. My mum's watching, yay! And also to Tina. Hello, Tina. Thanks for joining us. So if you're not a B cup, then you might see some of these things happening when you try your toile on. And it's not, we're all different body shapes, and it's all, it's just part of the richness of life. And so one size isn't necessarily going to fit all, but that doesn't mean you can't use all these patterns and get a great fit. So we're going to show you in a second how to kind of take your bodice pattern and then make some small modifications to that so that you can change it for your particular body shape. So there are a few useful measurements that you can take to understand a bit more about your own proportions. And so the general measurement that you would take for kind of assessing your bust size would be, I'm just going to move back a little bit, stand up a little bit. So you'd kind of measure across the fullest part of the bust. Now, this is generally, the patterns are assuming that you've got a B cup. So they're going to assume that your kind of size is distributed evenly sort of around. But if you imagine you've got a bigger cup size, like a D, an E, F, you know, whatever that might be, you're going to have a lot more inches kind of at the front of your body. And so and so choosing the pattern size just based on the bust isn't going to work for you, because you're going to end up making a bodice that's designed for a bigger torso. And so that will be bigger on the shoulders. It's going to be bigger kind of across the chest. Whereas actually you might still have quite small shoulders and quite a narrow back, but you could have a bigger bust. And so an alternative measurement, if you are like a bigger cup size, then another good measurement to take, and it's not good, this dress isn't great for showing you because it's got these kind of weird sleeves, but you can take a measurement which is kind of, depending on how high or low your bust sits, you can take a measurement which is sort of what they call your upper bust measurement. And so can you see that's kind of across, so it's going across my back and kind of quite close under my arms, but it's measuring probably more of my kind of actual bodice shape, excluding some of my boobs, really. And so it gives you a sort of truer size of your torso compared to this kind of full bust measurement. So if you are a bigger cup size, then I would recommend always also taking into account this kind of upper bust measurement, because that's going to give you a kind of better sense of where your starting pattern, what starting pattern size you might need. And so to give you an example, your kind of actual bust measurement, let's say it's 40, and let's say you've got a large cup size. Your upper bust here might only be 34. You know, it might be quite small, and so you would try and choose your pattern based on the 34, which might be a size down from actually what you would choose if you were choosing based on your bust size. So hopefully that makes sense. But you know, ask me any questions. If you're watching this in the replay, you know, by all means still ask questions. I do check those out, and I'll definitely do my best to answer you in those. Another couple of tips to measure is to have a bra on that is going to be the bra that you wear when you're going to, whatever you're going to wear under your finished garment. Because if I have kind of slightly padded bra, so I need to take that into consideration, because if I just make it for my flat boobs and then I put a bra on under my new garment, then it's obviously going to change the shape and the size. It's also going to change the position of your bust point. So I'm getting a bit older and my boobs are definitely not kind of where they used to be. And so when I have a bra on, they're nicely supported. Without a bra, it's not quite in the same position. Let's just put it that way. You don't need any more details than that. So one thing that you're going to want to know is kind of where your bust point is. And that's kind of where usually where your nipples are. And so or where you want them to be. If you've had any surgery or mastectomy or anything like that, and you haven't got a bust or a nipple, then you would want to kind of where you want that to be, represented in the garment, I guess is probably the easiest way to say it. And so a good measurement, because there's very few kind of points of reference here, is to go from the middle of your shoulder. So I'm just taking it from the middle of my shoulder point, and then I'm just measuring down to sort of where the bust point is. And so for me, it's about 11 inches. And that's a really useful measurement when we come to looking at the pattern, to work out where the bust point is on the pattern compared to your body. And for me, I'm a petite, so I'm only 5'2". And so often the bit where I'm shorter is actually from here to here and not in the full length. My kind of legs are like a normal length and my body's a bit shorter. And so sometimes that will tell me that I need to make a kind of an adjustment here in this section here. So it's worth knowing that. So make a note of that. The final thing that I would suggest taking is also the distance between your boobs. And so that's kind of like, if I just stand up a little bit here, so the distance between your nipples will again give you some idea of how to make this pattern adjustment that we're going to do. So you need to know kind of how far from the center your boobs are. because that's going to determine when we put darts in. The whole idea of this shaping is to give a nice fit kind of round a curve. So we're taking a flat piece of fabric and then we're trying to create something that will accommodate a curve underneath it, so a kind of cone underneath it. And so to do that, we can do that with darts and with shaping, and that's what we're trying to get right here. So we need the right kind of space created under here for your boobs to sit nicely. Okay, so just to recap on that, so you're going to take your full bust measurement. If you've got a bigger cup size, you're going to take your upper bust measurement as well, which is kind of across the bit above where your boobs are. And then you will also take a shoulder from your shoulder down to your nipple, which is your kind of the bust point, and then the distance between your boobs. And then we can use all of that information when we come to modify the pattern. You can also kind of, if you've got a pattern piece, you can also pin the pattern piece, pin the darts out if there are darts in it. I've got like a smaller version of a pattern, so this one isn't quite going to be representative, but you can kind of hold it up to you and you can look at where the bust point is sitting on the pattern. So this is like a scaled down version, but if you can imagine, I can kind of check, you know, is it going to be in roughly the right place before I even start, just by holding up the paper pattern. So you're going to line up the sort of centre front with your centre front and the shoulder with your shoulder, and then that will kind of give you an idea of whether you're going to need an adjustment as well. Okay, so if you try a toile on, like we said earlier, then the way that you'll know that you need a bust adjustment, just to recap on that, is that you'll have some pulling or some wrinkles kind of between the boobs. Either if you've got a smaller bust than the pattern, then you'll end up with extra fabric here that you don't need. If you've got a bigger bust than the pattern, then it will sort of look like it's sort of stretching across here. Equally, you'll get, like we said, this kind of borrowing of the fabric from the back coming around to the front on the side seam, and it will appear shorter in the front than the back does. So you've not got quite enough fabric to cover your boobs. Okay, so we're going to just look at a simple bodice pattern. I'm just going to show you a kind of first stage of a bust adjustment. But if you've got other pattern pieces, like pieces with a princess seam or with a yoke or something else like that, then let me know and I can do something specific to those pattern areas. But this will give you an idea of where we're trying to go with it. Okay, so so when we're making the adjustment, I'm just going to change my camera so you can see the pattern piece. Okay, so I've got my pattern piece here and I've just drawn on it a few markings to help us out. Let's see if we can put this light on, make it a bit brighter. Okay, so what we've got here is, so this is my bodice piece. You can see the shoulder point here, my neck line here. This piece would go onto a fold. So this is kind of like the center front here. And then this pattern has a dart. So there's like a dart marked on here as well. So it has some basic shaping. You might also see on your pattern piece, there might also be a kind of dart drawn here, depending on your pattern. So you might also have some shaping under the boob as well. But these two darts are generally pointing to where the bust point is, because you're trying to create that shaping to go to the bust point. And so what we need to do when we want to, I'm going to do a full bust adjustment first. So what we want to try and do is increase the distance, so increase the fabric that's going to go from side to side over the boob, because you've got more flesh in the middle. And then we're also going to try and increase the length so that you've got more fabric to go down over the boob. Okay, so to do that, what you're going to do is, if the bust point isn't already marked on the on your pattern piece, then you can take the measurements that you've got and find out roughly where your bust point is. And again, I would kind of hold it up to yourself and just double check. But the first measurement that you're going to want to use is your distance from the center. So you took the measurement between your boobs, and I think mine's about 7 inches. So you're going to take half of that, which would be 3.5 inches. Sorry, I work in inches. If you need centimeters, let me know. So I'm going to take my 3.5 inches, and then I'm going to draw kind of a mark where that is. And you might need to draw like a longer line to start with, because you might not know how far down it is. Okay, and then the second measurement that we took is from the shoulder seam. Now, this you're going to need to allow your seam allowance. So let's say my seam allowance is 1/2 inch. Then I'm going to go from the seam allowance and mine would have been 11, but this is kind of like a scaled down version of the pattern piece. So you're going to also measure from here down onto your line to wherever the measurement is that you've taken. So if mine really was kind of 11, then it would be down here. But on this pattern, let's say that's going to be 7 inches. So then you draw, and that's kind of where your nipple is essentially. That's what we're aiming for there. Okay, now this pattern has a dart in already, but you could do this if this was just a straight side and it didn't have a dart. What you're going to do is draw a line kind of at right angles out from, from the grain line. You're going to draw a line out to the side seam. You're also then going to draw a line from the bust point up into the armhole. Now, it doesn't really matter too much where this is. I've tended to pick just somewhere where it's sort of in the middle of the armhole curve here. This could correspond to the notch that's on the armhole as well. You could pick that. And then the last line that you're going to draw is down from the bust point down to the bottom hem. And you want to make sure that this is parallel to your kind of center front or to your grain line. So you're going to make sure that that lines up with that. Okay, and then now what we're going to do is cut our pattern. So I'm just going to cut the pattern up. Now I've put some arrows on here. So if you're referring back to this video, I've created an arrow which says we're going to cut up from the bottom and out along to the armhole. So that's our first cut. And we're going to leave a little hinge at this point. So we're going to try and leave this a little bit connected. Okay. And then the second cut that we're going to make is out from the, or inwards, sorry, from the, in this case from the dart, but from the side seam in towards the bust point. And again, we're going to leave a little hinge here so that we keep the fabric, we keep the paper piece joined here. And I'll show you how we do that now. So we're just going to cut straight up our line. Now I've just traced off a pattern here. And I always recommend tracing off patterns. If you haven't seen that, there's a blog post on the website where it tells you about how to trace off your pattern. So can you see I'm just leaving that sort of a little bit joined at the top, so I've got a hinge. And then the next cut that I'm going to do is out, inwards towards the bust point from the side seam. And again, I'm leaving a little hinge there. So you should end up with your pattern piece kind of allows you to sort of have these little hingy bits that we can use. Okay, so what we're essentially doing, you can start to see now that the change we're going to make is going to allow us to add some width to the pattern piece, so it will go round your bigger boobs. And it's also going to add, if you can compare, so this is the original length, but you can see we're starting to, by being able to pull this down and move it out, we can add length as well. And I'm going to show you how you kind of balance that out in the rest of the pattern. But this is then going to create that extra that you need to go over the bust, as well as across the bust. And this will, and we're not changing the size of the armhole, but we are going to change the dart that we add in the side seam to give us that nice cupping shape. So it's going to give us a bigger cup to be able to put our body into. Okay, so I'm just going to take a piece of, I'm going to try and use this brown paper. Excuse the noise. Just stick this on here. I'm just going to put my pattern onto there. Okay, get that all laid out. There we go. And stick another one there. So what we're going to do now is I'm just going to stick down one of these pieces so that we can keep that in place. And the kind of rule of thumb for this is depending on your cup size. So if the pattern's based on a B cup, which this one is, then if you are a C cup, you want to add 1/2 inch. If you are a D cup, you want to add 3/4 inch. If you are a double D or E cup, then you would add 1 1/4 inches. And then I'd say kind of between 1/4 and 1/2 inch for every cup size up from there. So, you know, if you're an F cup, then it would be 1 3/4, and G cup, again, you know, adding another 1/2 inch each time. So you could end up making quite a big change to this, but you'll see kind of how that looks. So I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to add in, so let's say we're going to go to a I'm going to go to a D or a double D or an E cup. So I'm going to add like 1.25 inches in this case. And so I'm going to draw a line 1.25 inches from my original line. Okay, and I'm just going to draw that all the way down. And then I want to now start to get this so that it sort of lies flat against my line. So I'm going to move that pattern piece. I'm going to make sure everything else is smoothed out at the top. I've not got my usual sellotape, so it's taking me a bit longer to cut my bits of tape off, but bear with me. So you can see that we're going to start to add, like we said, add width to the pattern piece. So I'm just lining that up with my new straight line. And can you see now it's also increased? So this was the original, the size of the original dart, and now it's added this extra piece into the dart. So it's going to give you more shaping. Now this looks a bit more exaggerated because this is a scale down pattern and I'm adding quite a bit onto there, but you know, it shows that it will scale up for different cup sizes. It's also going to give you some more fabric just here kind of, so it's not going to add loads of extra bulk to where the armhole is, but it will give you a bit more coverage here, kind of leading into, you know, sort of from the arm down to the bust. Okay, so that's our first step. So we're going to, that gives us a new dart shape, which I'll just show you how to true that up in a second. So we'll just stick that down there. Yes, and then the last thing that we need to do is just balance out this bottom section. So can you see now, if I put the ruler here, you can see we've got like a discrepancy with the bottom. Now, there are two ways you could do this. You could just extend this. This is fairly straight, so I could just draw a new bottom line. If you've got a shaped hem or some stuff going on in this bottom section of the pattern, what you can do instead is draw yourself a line. You can do as far up as here if you've got some detail going on here, or you can do it near the bottom. It doesn't really matter where that is. And then you can cut this piece, so there might be shaping at the bottom or, you know, something like that. And then you're going to give yourself a straight line to link that up to. I'll just draw that there. And then I can move that down now until it's level with my original piece. And there you have it. That's kind of the basics of your full bust adjustment. So put that down there. So what that's going to give you is more fabric kind of across the width, but it's also going to give you extra length to cover. So it will stop it sticking out. This bigger dart will actually also pull that bottom hem in and under, so it kind of curves around your boob rather than just sticking out over your boobs, you know, so it's gonna give you a bit more balance. So if we draw the new dart shape in, now normally when you are making a dart, you don't make the dart all the way to your nipple because it looks a bit odd. It's a bit like in those like the Madonna kind of cone cup bra that she had. If you want that effect, then great, then do your dart to here. But the kind of standard is to go about 1 inch out and put your dart point here. So what we're going to do now is redraw that line out to where the original dart was. So there are dart legs, new dart legs. Okay, and then to true up the pattern, what you would usually do as well is you would fold it at the dart. So I'll just show you that. So by truing up the pattern, I just mean to kind of give you the right finished side seam shape. So what you normally do is just fold your dart out. And then, sorry about this paper, it makes quite a lot of noise. And then I just kind of move this around here. And then you could cut or just mark that. I'm just going to cut it to show you the shape. And this will kind of give you your dart shape at the edge. You'll see that now. So can you see that's just kind of created the the new dart shape. So when you then fold that under, when you make your side seam, that will just go neatly then to the shape of the side seam here. So it just means it will be nice and neat when it's folded out. So if you were doing a small bust adjustment, you would do the opposite of this. So instead of adding distance here, you would take it in. And what that would do is if there was a dart here already, it would make the dart smaller. And so you would just kind of overlap these two sections, and that would give you the similar thing. And it would you would then also maybe shorten the length a little bit here as well, because this would bring this up as opposed to out and down. Okay, so I'm just going to change my camera back. Yeah, so that's a kind of really quick introduction to doing a bust adjustment. I don't want to overcomplicate it, because I think it's one of those things where you want to be able to do it, you know, if you have a bigger bust, you're going to need to do it on quite a few patterns. It's as straightforward as that. So in terms of how much you increase it by, I would say initially, you know, try it on your pattern, try it on your toile, and see what's going to work for you. And then once you've made it once or twice, then you're going to know it stays very similar, because quite a lot of the patterns are based on the same, you know, the same initial kind of bust size. So hopefully that gives you some useful information. Like I say, next time we are going to be talking about back adjustments. So whether you've got a broad back or a narrow back. I would suggest that this is one of the adjustments that I would probably do first, because what can seem to happen is that to accommodate a bigger boob or like a different boob size, you can feel like you're pulling a garment forward. And so you might think that you need a back adjustment, when actually you don't really need a back adjustment. You just need to have got the boob size right. It does really affect this side seam area. And so getting this front section, I think, is quite important. We talked about the shoulders last week. So making sure the shoulder slope is right. And then that will lead into this bust adjustment. And then I think then you can start to look at, do you need any adjustments on the back? And that's what we're going to go into next time. So thanks very much for joining me today. And if you're watching this in the replay, let me know what you think. Have you tried it? You know, have you done these? Have you found them useful? I've done them on a few patterns. I'm just a double D. I'm not massive. So even just a small adjustment makes a difference. You know, I tell you that now, and it can really change, particularly like camisole type tops. If you find that it's sticking out quite a lot, then it could just be that you need to increase the bust, the dart at the bust, or add a dart at the bust. You can do this adjustment on jersey or stretch patterns as well, but they often don't have a dart in. There is a version of this where you don't have to, you can create the bust adjustment without creating a dart. And if you'd like to know more about that, then let me know in the comments and I can do something specifically on that. So that's it for today. Thank you very much, and I'll catch you again next week.